Did you know that pound for pound or dollar for dollar, the Australian venture capital market has more unicorns than basically anywhere in the world? Now you're probably wondering, what's he talking about? Mythical creatures like unicorns? Well, I'm actually talking about a company that at startup phase reaches more than $1 billion in valuation before it's on the stock exchange. Companies like Safety Culture or Culture Amp or even Canva are examples of companies that have reached unicorn status here in Australia. But where do these companies come from? Who are the people that start them? How do you get involved with them? Could you invest with them? Well, in the new book, Riding the Unicorn by Wenee and Thomas Derricott, they uncover some of the stories and lessons behind Australia's best private and startup companies, but also some of the businesses that maybe didn't have the future that they intended, such as Milk Run. In the upcoming podcast episode, the podcast that you're listening to right now, you're going to hear from Thomas and Wenee as they detail their own entrepreneurial journey and studying these people, the founders and the investors that make these types of companies happen. This is a fun and engaging podcast. We talk about all sorts of things like how Wenee and Thomas started a cat cafe, but found out that Wenee was allergic to cats. So you'll find out how that went and that little startup venture that they had and how it was actually quite successful, all in this episode of the podcast. If you like this show, don't forget to pick up the book, Riding the Unicorn, at all good bookstores. Without further ado, here's Wenee and Thomas Derricott. Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Wenee, Thomas, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us. It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good to be here in Sydney talking to you about Riding the Unicorn, the startup guide you'll want to read. It's got a wonderful unicorn on the front. For people that are watching, you can see me holding it up. When I saw this on, I think it was your LinkedIn, Thomas, I was like, what on earth is that? So Riding the Unicorn, it's a book by the both of you. What is it?
Let's start with what a unicorn is, which has a second meaning that we didn't know about when we first wrote it. So in this context, a unicorn is a company with a valuation of $1 billion or more. Mm-hmm. If you want to get technical, there's like super unicorns and ultra unicorns, but we just stick with a company that's worth over $1 billion in valuation. Cool. But since writing the book, we also learned that it has a different meaning, which kind of hits hard for us because we're a married couple.
So we discovered that a unicorn is also a mythical third person that can enter a relationship and basically give that relationship whatever they need, then comfortably exit out again without complicating things.
Yeah, so we just decided that this book has been our unicorn in the sense that it's come into our lives and it's given us what we've needed without complicating our marriage. So it kind of serves both purposes for us.
I like that. So then you decided to write a book about this thing called a unicorn, not necessarily about a mythical thing that's entering your relationship, but maybe about $1 billion companies. Why write the book?
Well, Wenee and I have both worked in different aspects of the startup and business world. So I've worked as an early employee for a number of Australian startups. Wenee has worked as a startup mentor before. Together, we both co-founded Sydney's first dedicated cat cafe, which is probably, it's probably its own separate podcast. But because of these experiences, we'd both been approached by a lot of people who would ask us where they could start their journey. They wanted to launch a business. Maybe it was a side hustle. Maybe they wanted to launch a $1 billion startup and they wanted to educate themselves. And we'd both read a lot of books about business. And we found that a lot of them were really well informed, but they were very dense. They felt like homework. Oh, and I know you've spoken to me before about The Intelligent Investor. And I'm paraphrasing you here, but you said, its insights are fantastic, but it's a slog.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt with a lot of business and startup books. So we thought, what if we could write something that educates people, but it feels like a summer read? And we're both very fortunate that we happen to know a lot of founders and CEOs who would lend us their time and their insights. And so we thought if we could distill the common wisdom from what they've shared with us, maybe we could create a step-by-step guide that feels accessible.
Absolutely. It's really about navigating from those early stages to how do you find your MVP? How do you find product market fit? How do you find funding? These things, there are often books that go deep into one particular issue, but actually understanding the entire life cycle, seeing how founders themselves solve these problems and sometimes don't solve them. I think that storytelling, we learn through stories, right?
Yeah.
We're humans like that. That's why a podcast would exist. It's more than hearing principles. It's seeing people's lived experience.
How many people did you interview roughly for the book?
Roughly about 20.
Yeah, all Australian?
One New Zealander.
One New Zealander as well, because there's some great companies that come out of New Zealand. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Amazing, yeah. And we tend to claim them if they're successful. We tend to say, oh, they're Australian, forgetting that they're actually from New Zealand.
It's the Russell Crowe effect, right? When he's behaving well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Wenee, you kind of took us on a journey there of like what the book's kind of broadly, who it's for. But in the book, you do talk about, this is an Australian-centric book. When people think of startups, they think maybe like massive tech companies in Silicon Valley and those types of things. What makes the Australian context unique? Like I feel like we envy a lot of the United States in terms of the companies they build, but what makes Australia unique, good and bad, I guess?
That is such an interesting question. It's really down to why we wrote this, right? Silicon Valley has the funding. We know this. And the scale of what they can do, the amount of bets they can make is not something that Australia tends to achieve. But as a recent VC report showed, Australia is the most capital efficient place in the world to find a unicorn. Yeah.
For every dollar spent.
For every dollar spent. So for every $1 billion spent, we produce 1.22 unicorns. That's almost double some of the other startup hubs in the world, which you would not expect. We are the second fastest growing tech ecosystem in the world. Only India pips us at the post.
Wow.
And I just don't think that we knew that. And I think that we've been hanging around this startup ecosystem for about 10 years. As Thomas said, I've been a startup mentor. I work with UNSW founders. And we've seen the growth. And within some of the stories, the people that we interviewed, like Tim Fung from Airtasker, he was there at the beginning. He's the reason that Tankstream Labs, Tankstream Ventures exists. And so he's ridden that particular wave. So I think really when it comes down to it, the difference between Silicon Valley and Australia is they have the scale, but we have the discipline. Because we don't have the funding to the same extent, we're a lot more focused on customer revenue, on product market fit, on making sure that the technology actually works, or whatever our product is, there's a market for it. We think lean, but we build to grow.
Does it hold us back, though, as a country, like to think too lean?
Look, I think I love action movies and I love mythology, so I always think about it like the mythologized version of Sparta, where they'd send their children off into the wilderness to survive on their own, and some of them would never return. But those who did would be the most powerful, formidable Grecians in all of Greater Greece. And I feel like that's what's happening in Australia. Those startups that fail, they often fail a lot earlier than they may if they operated in the US, where they may just be able to land $10 million for an idea. Whereas in Australia, don't quote me on these numbers, but a lot of VCs won't even give you $5 million if you've proven your business model with revenue. So it means that the barrier to entry is higher, but once a business has proven its mettle, it's much more equipped to succeed. So I think it can be a blessing and a curse.
Well, if I could just add to that point, what's really interesting, I agree, it is actually a bit of an issue in Australia. The fact that we aren't funding such a promising ecosystem is interesting. The fact is, out of the startups that come out of Australia, 40% of them seek overseas funding. That tells you a lot. I think that comes down to the investment landscape here, which you would know really well, that we tie up a lot of our money in property, in shares. We don't tend to see this sort of business ecosystem as something we invest in. And it's really to our own detriment.
In the book, obviously you spoke to lots of these founders and like senior business people give you a really good cross section, which is very unique. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't actually seen a book like this in Australia, one that focuses on like end to end the landscape, but also the cross section of this industry. You map out a 6-stage framework for how startups grow. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, essentially, what we realized is that people approaching business will often have different goals and different stages in their journey. And so we wanted to be able to cater to people regardless of their stage. So there are some people who might think, okay, what's my idea? How do I even find an idea to launch a business?
Yeah.
Other people who might think, I have an idea, but what's going to be the right business model for it? Do I want to run this as a side hustle, or do I want to go all in and launch a startup, or maybe take a more conventional business route? Then there'll be those who might be a bit more advanced and they're looking for guidance on how to secure funding or how to find product market fit. That is, who's going to buy their product and how to secure their unit economics. And so we wanted to be able to write a guide where if someone was starting their journey and they wanted the full picture, they could read from start to finish. But if someone was interested in a specific phase, they could just skip to that point, access the information they needed and think, okay, I feel a bit more equipped now.
Yeah, cool. I like it. Because I've read the book Black Belt by the guys who founded Judo Bank. That was super illuminating for me, like to hear how the bank was built. And that was one of the unicorns that I remember from Australia. It's now on the public market, so it's a little bit different. But I remember the hustle and things that they had to go through to do that. For someone just starting out, what should they expect when it comes to pivots and setbacks in particular?
I think the main thing to embrace in terms of their expectation is that when you're a founder, you stop being a specialist and you start becoming a problem solver in chief.
Yeah.
You're constantly solving problems. Lachlan McKnight, who's the CEO of Legal Vision, who we interviewed for the book, he described it as almost like you're rotating between different business areas and fixing whatever's on fire there. It's almost like crop rotation. Firstly, you come out, you've got to have a product. Otherwise, what is your business? Then you need to basically take it to market, make sure you get some sales. So you're suddenly learning sales. You're pivoting to marketing, you're pivoting to fundraising. You're trying to work out exactly what the business needs at any particular point in time.
It's like that meme that's been circulating for a while, which is adulthood is pretty much saying, but after the next couple of weeks, everything will calm down over and over again until you die. That's what it's like being a business owner or a startup founder.
Yeah.
But to that point, we found this really interesting idea that was explored by Alexis Soulopoulos, who is the co-founder and former CEO of MadPause, and now he is the CEO of EverAI, which is doing incredible things.
I know that name.
Yeah, and he created this idea that was so interesting, we coined the term the Soulopoulos score, which essentially boils down to you're going to face different problems every day. And as your company or your startup grows, the problems are going to change, but they'll always be there. You can't be an expert in all of them. So you need to determine how adept you need to be at solving a particular problem. Like if a problem lands in front of you, do you need to get it 50% right? Does it need to be 90% right? Like for you, for example, you have an AFSL.
Yeah.
There are going to be certain regulatory issues you need to get 100% right. You know, it's binary. You'll lose your license otherwise.
Yeah.
Then there might be certain aspects of marketing where you might think, oh God, I have all these fires I need to extinguish. I know I need to focus on marketing, but 50% is going to be good enough for today. So being able to determine where your problem sits in terms of your priorities and how much attention you need to give it and how quickly you need to upskill will allow you to be able to triage problems as you continue to grow. And it will kind of give you a framework to think, hey, solving problems doesn't need to be scary. In fact, that's just my business as usual now.
I like that because there's always a problem. Like anyone can attest, there's always a problem.
Exactly.
I think it was you before, Thomas, you mentioned side hustle, small businesses that kind of just compound away. And then there's startups. I think there's a kind of, I don't know if it's a misconception, but there's a lot of people that don't understand the differences between what those terms are. Like what's a startup? Is this a side hustle or is it a real business? How do you guys define that?
We have a pretty good analogy. Wenee?
Oh, well, we think about plants, right? If you think about startups as being like weeds and small businesses are like trees, that you understand that the main difference between them is intent. Startups are there to spend and scale. Yeah. So every dollar you make, you want out the door to continue funding growth.
And to grow as quickly as possible, like weeds.
Like weeds. Yeah. Whereas a small business, your actual aim is to earn and grow. Just comfortably, steadily, over time. And this is why I think it's so appealing in Australia to enter the business world, because you obviously have that kind of independence, etc. But when you understand that the world requires all kinds of approaches to growth, that's really what you need to understand.
Because a tree can be a shrub, or it can be a massive Moreton Bay fig, or a redwood that sat there for 300 years.
Yeah.
But beyond that, when it comes to choosing between, say, a side hustle, small business, and startup, what we found from talking to everyone is that you really need to ask yourself, how do you want to spend your days? And I previously worked for a pet sitting startup, so I always go to the example of animals. Let's say, for example, your goal is you want to spend more time with dogs. You have a really annoying landlord, they won't let you keep pets, so that is your goal. You want to make money from spending time with dogs. A side hustle is perfect. If you become a dog walker, sure, it might not be enough to pay all of your bills, but you will spend almost 100% of your time with dogs. You'll spend little time on marketing, on admin, you just sign up to an existing platform and you get your fix. But let's say you want to build a livelihood around your passion for animals. Then maybe you'll open a dog grooming business. In that case, you're not going to spend every working hour with dogs. You're going to need to do the books, you'll need to handle staff rosters, but every single day you'll see dogs. But let's say you're a dog owner and you want to solve problems that other dog owners have. That's when a startup business model is right for you. Now, you might almost never see dogs during your working life because your days are going to be occupied by marketing meetings, fundraising, HR, stakeholder engagement, etc. But what you're doing is you are making life easier for people who have your passion. So asking yourself how you want to spend your day can lead to the right decision about what you want to pursue.
Yeah, I love that example. I love that you used a dog as the example, but you said before you had a cat cafe.
The ultimate betrayal, Owen.
I know, right? This is a never-ending political quagmire for us.
So are you cat people, dog people, both?
Why not both? Why not both? It turned out that about a month into opening the cat cafe, I realized that what I thought was just a passing flu of some kind was cat allergies.
Oh, wow.
So it was just unfortunate timing, and it was an amazing experience. We put up the crowdfunding campaign. We went viral. We opened it within 5 months. We absolutely rode that crazy build it as you go kind of mentality. So to realize that a month in, went, oh, this might not be the right business for me, personally speaking.
From a business standpoint, it was actually a testament to the power of naivete. Because we had no idea how difficult it would be to launch a bricks and mortar business, and that's why we did it. We decided we wanted to launch a cat cafe, so we created a Facebook page, which back in 2015 was the People's Platform, and then within 3 days it had gone viral. We had people messaging us saying, hey, where can I contribute to this as part of a crowdfunding campaign? So we created an Indiegogo page and we made $40,000. And people suddenly start asking, when is this going to open? It was February, so we thought, I don't know, July? And we had no idea how ridiculous it would be to try and find a property, renovate it, and gain the relevant approvals for what at the time did not exist as a business model in New South Wales. But because we were so naive, we just kind of made it happen.
Look, when you have no choice, it has to happen.
Absolutely.
So we opened in July.
Late July.
Late July. It was technically still July.
It was.
And it was fantastic. It celebrates its 10-year anniversary this year. So madly, it's still around. We obviously sold it as I am allergic to the business. But you know what? what? It taught us so much. And I think what really happened is that it ignited our passion for writing a book like that.
Absolutely. Because there was just so many things that we didn't know.
Yeah.
And that we didn't know we didn't know.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we thought if we can share some of these insights with other people and gain some insights from people much more intelligent than us, then hopefully it'll be of value to someone.
Well, I really like that. I really like that story. I'd heard the Cat Cafe before, but not. I didn't know the full story, so that's great. Thank you. One of the things that makes a lot of sense in business, but also in life, is like, as Charlie Munger would say, "Tell me where I'm going to die, and I won't go there." The late Charlie Munger, I might add. So, this idea that try to avoid mistakes from the outset. Now, you did. You opened the book with that. You've got a few examples: Rome's, Govira, Milk Run, which Milk Run's still a thing now, isn't it?
Milk Run was sold.
Yeah, it wasn't sold. It was sold for parts. And it was sold for parts to Woolworths.
Yeah.
And Milk Run had been trying to disrupt Woolworths' business model. Milk Run, after a valiant effort, I'll say, failed. And then Woolworths bought what remained of it. So it's kind of like the Joker killing Batman and then donning Batman's cowl and saying, I'm going to fight crime in Batman's name. It's like the legacy lives on, but at what cost?
Yeah, yeah. So why start with the failures rather than successes?
You remember a failure, don't you?
Yeah,
and
I do.
I think when you think about what you learn from, the cheapest way you can learn is from someone else's mistake.
Interesting. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because like we were just talking off air before as well about some of the people that you remember talking to, the businesses that you remember like profiling and that sort of thing, and just hearing how some of these startups are incredible. Like you can be here one day and in a couple of years you've sold this business for so much money because you've got that idea. And maybe I'll ask you that on air so we can just hear it from the two of you. Is like who stood out to you the most when you're putting together the book, you're doing the research? Like who was that person?
For me, honestly, it was not who you'd expect. It was this woman called Nellie McQuinn. And she was part of a $3 billion exit in the UK. If you have kids, you probably are familiar with some of her work. Coco Melon, for example.
Oh, Coco Melon.
Is this sending chills down your spine,
Yeah,
Owen?
yeah, I know.
Little
Coco
Charlie at
Melon.
home?
Yes.
She described it as crack for kids in music.
Yeah.
And
Which is probably a fair for anyone that's got it's full on, but it's
we send our apologies.
yeah.
But her journey was just so fascinating. She went from basically going on a year abroad to the UK. She wanted to go into theatre. She studied there, and she was involved in a production company where she basically needed to learn every aspect of digital production. So taught herself how to edit, taught herself how to film, etc. And from there, found herself in the niche of children's entertainment. 5-person company, dominated that niche in the UK. She led this. She partnered with an Indian sort of provider who was interviewing her to basically, turbocharge children's entertainment. She dominated the YouTube space. And from there, she attracted the interest of Candle Media, who acquired her company, Moonbug Entertainment, as part of an exit, a massive exit. And suddenly her problems change completely. So she starts off as an actor. She teaches herself production. She's there with puppets, on TV. And then she's suddenly leading production for this multinational company. She's heading up teams in LA, in the UK, etc. And the scale of what she needs to understand completely changes. She told me the story. She went to Cannes and realized, wow, about 10 years ago, I would have hustled just to have a meeting here. And now this is where I've ended up. And to me, it was this incredible trajectory. And the reason I think I find her so interesting is she's gone and started all over again. She finished up there and she's now disrupting the will writing space because it's something that she's really passionate about. And she's using AI, technology, etc. But she re-qualified as a will writer. And she's one of those prime examples of how once a founder, always a founder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so cool. Both stories that you just shared are the story of trying and trying again.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think Coco Melon, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to quickly bring this up on my computer. Yeah, Coco Melon is the one that my brother-in-law does not let his kids watch. He's
Quite understandable.
Yeah, he says, oh no, they don't have that on the TV here. And so when they come to our house, they're allowed to watch it, but not at their house.
Those kids must love Uncle Owen.
Well, it is, it's pretty addictive, that show, Coco Melon, so makes sense. How about you, Thomas?
For me, it would probably be Jenna Leo, who is the co-founder and CEO of Like Family. And they are a platform for social care. So what they do is they connect carers with elderly or disabled people or people with special needs so that they can have social experiences and feel rewarded and enriched and essentially leave their homes, have a good time, and know that they have the support they need. And I really enjoyed speaking with Jenna for a few reasons. Firstly, I felt the reason that her and her co-founder, who was also her husband, Matt, the reason they founded Like Family was such a personal one. So way back before they launched, Jenna and Matt were both working as corporates. Mm-hmm. And they were at the beginning of their career, so they were at that point where they were expected to hustle all the time. Mm. While that was happening, though, Matt's elderly parents reached a point where they required care. And that fell to Jenna and Matt. And so they were caught in this really difficult position where, on one hand, they couldn't yet afford to work part-time or scale back their commitments to their careers. But on the other hand, they would receive phone calls during the day from concerned neighbors saying, hey, we just found Matt's parents out on the street. They were wandering around and they'd forgotten their way back home. And they kind of found themselves facing a conundrum until they met this woman who was conveniently named Destiny. And she said, hey, look, I understand you two are working all the time. Jenna, Matt, it sounds like your parents and your in-laws could maybe do with some company. I'd be happy to come by, take them for a coffee, get some groceries, just generally help you out. And so Destiny spent a day with Matt's parents, and it made such a difference that Jenna and Matt reached a point where they thought, we want to be able to do this for other people. And to me, that is like a classic origin story. And like it would feel like it was scripted if it wasn't so authentic. Mm. And beyond that, I just love the fact that Jenna was so incredibly honest with her journey. Sometimes you interview people, fortunately, we didn't speak to anyone like this, but you hear of interviews where it can feel like a ghostwritten autobiography. Yeah. Like everything's been run past the PR team before they sit down with you.
Yeah.
Whereas Jenna shared all of the problems that she and Matt faced in the early days, the pivots, how originally they were called home care heroes, but then they realized that they had unwittingly misbranded their business because in calling themselves home care heroes, everyone in the industry thought that they were offering nursing instead of like social support. And then she discussed how they solved that problem by going along to conventions and industry conferences and speaking to everyone until they could really drill down on what it was that they needed. And I felt like by pulling back the curtain, she was able to really showcase some teachable moments for anyone reading. And I guess when I was speaking to Jenna as well, it really highlighted for me a lesson that pretty much all of our interviewees gave us, which is you can never conduct too much market research.
Right. Okay.
Nobody has ever said, I wish I didn't spend quite as much time speaking to my customers.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Such a good point. I've never heard that. Yeah. One of the things that you do talk about, and one of the things you've already spoken about in this podcast is the idea of like a second-time founder or a third-time founder or business owner. What lessons have come from your research in terms of people who have gone at it again? And I really like this point because I think to myself, like, if you knew all the things from the first business, surely that makes you like it. The chance of success for the second business is even better again. So maybe not, but what did you guys find?
One thing that I noticed from the founders who would give it a go again, like Nellie McQuinn, Tim Fung, Tasker wasn't his first, is that they were much better at starting with the end in mind, kind of like a crime writer. They know exactly who's going to die, but in a business sense. So whatever goal they were trying to achieve, they're very good at mapping backwards and saying, okay, if I want to be there in 3 years, in 5 years, what do I need to do next month, next year? And keeping themselves really accountable to that. And I think the other thing that I really noticed among all the founders that we interviewed, and writing a book like this, it's almost like placing bets on people that none of them will flame out. And fortunately, they have done the opposite of flame out. So it's like being a good judge of character, I suppose. But one thing I also really noticed as a sort of common trait with the people who were repeat founders, and Pasha Ryan, who was from Forage, a virtual internships program, and now he's building A1 agents in Y Combinator, he embraces this as well, this idea of becoming an endless novice, that every problem you're coming to, you understand that you can break it down to 3 basic steps. You understand what needs to be learned, what you don't know, and what you can do to bridge that gap of knowledge. And with AI, and Nellie said this to me just the other day, if you see AI as your thought partner to fill in the gaps of what you don't understand, it can at least take you in the directions of what you need to learn. So rather than seeing AI as it's going to replace you, it's going to do all this work for you, it's not. But it can very much help you on that journey. And I found the best founders, they understood that 300 mentality, to take you back that Sparta reference. How do you make one person feel like 100? And the really good founders, they know how to do that.
So that's interesting. One person feel like 100.
At the same time, sometimes successful founders can be blinded unwittingly by their own successes, and they can develop a bit of confirmation bias. And I think there are a few very public examples of that in the wider world, but I'll use myself as an example because I actually lived through this. But after launching Catmosphere, I had that thought that most straight men in their 20s who drink have, which is, I should open a bar.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I just thought, hey, we launched this cat cafe without knowing anything about hospitality businesses. So clearly I must be pretty good at this because the cat cafe has worked out. So the second time around, it will be even more successful. And as a result, I didn't really ask myself any of the questions that a new business owner should, such as how do the unit economics between a bar and a cat cafe differ? What kind of challenges will I face with a bar that I didn't face with a cat cafe? What part of our success with Catmosphere was due to our hard work and what part was a component of luck? And because of that, the bar actually failed where the cat cafe had done really well. And this hadn't really happened with anyone we interviewed, but I have seen it happen in the world as well, where founders can maybe stop questioning the process if they've had a success in the past. And they just maybe can unwittingly think that success is an inherent part of their personality.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I find that with people in their careers too. And also with the way they go about things. It's like, well, this worked for me in the past. I'm just going to keep leaning into that. Like as the world evolves, you mentioned AI before, is like, how do you approach that? Are you optimistic? Do you incorporate it? Or do you kind of, well, that is new. I know I'm good at this thing over here, but I'm not going to approach it like a novice. That makes a lot of sense. I also like the idea of effectively starting with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier said than done. I'm guilty of this as much as anyone, but because once you start with the end in mind, you can then set in like yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, even potentially daily kind of rocks. If you want. The Traction book by Gino Wickman's really good for that. I don't know if you've come across that.
Yes, the rock idea, yes.
Yeah. That's a really good one. Now, as we come to the end of the show, the book Riding the Unicorn, the startup guide you'll want to read, where do people get it?
Any good bookstore in Australia and New Zealand. And we've just confirmed it's going to be available in Australian airports as well.
Cool.
So if you're on the go, you can pick it up there.
Yeah, cool. And
it'll also be on Kindle, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Audio book?
that's in the works. That won't be released in late October with the book itself.
Yep.
But we are currently finalizing the details around that. So hopefully some stage early next year.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. A lot of good books start with the print version and they move into the audio, like Dave Gow from Strong Money.
Yes.
He's a good example. So writing the unicorn, great work on getting it done. And
Thank you.
putting in all the research. Like this isn't like other books where you can be, I don't know, a financial advisor and you can write about personal finance, right? Or something like that. This is a book that required a lot of research and a lot of time behind the scenes. So kudos to the both of you.
Thank you so much.
I've got one final question for you. And this is more so just like a big picture question to get the community involved. Obviously, they'll pick up a copy of the book, at least I hope. Yes, fingers crossed. Is a lot of people that would listen to the show love the idea of getting involved in the startup community in some way? You know, on some of our other shows, we talk about investing in startups and these types of things. But even just being part of one is unlike any other experience. What advice would you have for anyone that maybe wants to get involved in this ecosystem writ large?
You know, I think the key part that we see for everyone who really catches the startup bug is that they network before they really need to network, before they really need anything from anyone. And what I mean by that, we talk about it in the book as well, is go into the startup space and, you know, obviously there's a lot of startup events that you can run and there's a lot of startup hubs that you can join. But more than that, and I think this is much more pertinent to anyone who's looking to build something, every one of us has woken up and said, this is annoying. This is not working. It's driving me insane. And you have this feeling, maybe other people feel this way. But to go beyond that point to find out whether there's a market, and that's a critical point because there's a lot of problems solved that no one will pay for. Go into the spaces where your customers might be. And we saw Jenna Leo do that by going to, you know, the care market and conferences like that. We've seen Nick Whitehouse, who built Legal AI. He went and spoke to lawyers. That's really where you get started because there's no end to the customer research that you can do really, really well. But once you're there, listen very judiciously to what your customers are actually telling you. I'll give you an example. So there was Pasha Ryan who did Forage. He interviewed something like 600 students and they said to him, okay, we need help. We need a mentoring platform to get a job. And so they went off, dutifully built a mentoring platform and launched it. Crickets. No one used it. There were mentors waiting for students that never really arrived. And so they went back to the drawing board and said, okay, let's look at that whole sentence. We want mentoring platform to get a job. They want a job and they feel like they're locked out of that. So they re-engineered it, worked with their VC firm and said, all right, why don't we try virtual internships? Because right now, when you go to any of, you know, these big companies, big law firms, big anything, there's a limited number of internships they can get. But what if we could make a virtual version of that so people could show that they were at least engaging with that world? That's the version that had product market fit.
Yeah, right. So it's just one step to the side.
Yes.
Yeah, probably a better business model too.
Absolutely. Well, they've sold to a US competitor, so I think it did turn out better.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that I'd really like readers or listeners to take away, which is if you have an idea, just get started. But know that getting started doesn't mean you need to quit your day job and invest your life savings. So often you listen to motivational speakers, say successful founders who are running a TED Talk saying, just get behind your idea, just commit to it, just get started. And that can be really daunting. But something we found speaking to all these different founders is that getting started can sometimes mean creating a survey form and sending it to your target market. It can mean creating an MVP, minimum viable product website that you hack together yourself on Squarespace. It can be creating the most basic, dodgiest, MacGyvered version of your product and sharing it to a few different people.
Yeah.
Because once you start doing that, you'll firstly start gathering intel from your target market, which is really important. And secondly, you'll convince yourself that it doesn't need to be an all or nothing equation. You can progress towards your dream without quitting your job and betting the farm. And I think for a lot of people, that can be really empowering. It certainly was for the people we spoke to. And, it's like if you want to get in shape, start doing 10 push-ups a day. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you'll do more because you'll be able to, and you'll be bored with stopping at 10. It's the same thing. Getting started can be as simple as creating a Google form and sending it to a few people.
I like that. I actually know businesses that didn't get off the ground because they did that. In Zara, who heads up our business podcast, she was going to do a co-working space in a rural area. And she's like, that's going to cost money. You need to get a lease or buy a building, or so much money goes into that. Why don't we just do a QR code that says, do you want a co-working space in this town? And then it went to a Google form, asked them what they want, how much they want it for. And it was enough to prove that there's probably something there, but not enough to go all out.
Well, that's the other side of the equation, right? Isn't it so much better to learn that before you've taken on a 3-year lease to a property that people don't really want to access?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a great lesson. Well, guys, there's plenty more lessons in the book. Really appreciate you doing this. Really appreciate you taking the time out. Kudos on getting the book. Like you said, wouldn't it be cool to see it in airports and those types of things? That's a real point of pride for you both. So well done to you both. Riding the Unicorn. It should be out by the time this podcast goes out. So if not, it'll be out soon. You can head to the links in your podcast player or in your YouTube description, and you can get the book for yourself. I've got 5 copies here. I was very keen to get a book and then share them with people as they come through our office back in Melbourne. So thank you for delivering them. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Owen. It's been a pleasure being here today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Owen.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.